Hey there, it's Dan Kenner with another episode of The Casual Author. Today is Monday, October 23rd, 2023, as I record this, and this is episode number 94 of the podcast. Today we're talking to ZS Diamanti about building an author career or building the foundations for an author career. We talk a lot about how to build a hub of your website, how to collect readers through your email list. We talk about making your content evergreen in terms of things about you and things about your books. I was very invested in this conversation. It definitely got me very excited and pumped about rebuilding some of the foundations of my author career. I have some of my hubs and things set up, and they are relatively evergreen. Although there's some tweaks that I know I need to make. And after my conversation with him, felt a lot of motivation and excitement to do so. Before we get started too far into this, if you like this channel, if you like the podcast, like and subscribe to it wherever you may be listening. Maybe you're on the podcast streaming system, maybe you're on YouTube. Definitely take advantage of that so you don't miss any of the episodes. And share with your friends if you know of any other authors who might need some encouragement, positivity around casual authoring, so to speak, because that's what we're all about, right? So in terms of updates, I feel like recently I've been starting with the homestead updates because I feel like those are, for some reason, the easiest to remember. Perhaps because a lot of them are more physical and in depth, and I dedicate a lot of like specific time to them on Saturdays. So this last week particularly, we've been working on the chicken run and coop. So talked a lot about it, but we are finished now, which is great. It's great to have that done because it's been hanging over our heads for so long. We've been wanting to do that for 3 years since we moved in here. Now it's done. So we've got the permanent run up. The chickens now have a great outdoor space they can go, though. They're all fenced in, protected from predators. And then I had to finish the roofing inside their coop. It's not entirely predator. It wasn't entirely predator secure, but it is now. Put a bunch of hardware cloth, which, by the way, if you don't know what hardware cloth is, it's a thing. It's essentially just woven wire, really thin, strong stainless steel wire that animals can't really break through. Raccoons and other animals can rip through chicken wire. It's kind of crazy. They're pretty strong and crafty. So the hardware cloth is actually pretty strong. And it also cuts the crap out of you. I have some battle wounds. You can't see it if you're on the podcast. It actually doesn't look too bad. You can see on my arm there. The hardware cloth just slices. It's like claws, and it's really tense. So it'll spring back if you're not holding it well enough, and it just gouges into whatever piece of skin you have exposed. So that was kind of fun. I don't have as many scratches as I usually do when I'm working with hardware cloth, but it's all done. Really looking forward to getting the chickens in there. They will be moving this week because the weather here in Idaho is taking a plunge. We're going from, around 39 to 40 degrees at night to 15 and 12 degrees in 6 days. So just taking a massive plunge. The nights are going to get freezing cold here. Which, we kind of expected. It's Idaho. It's end of October. It is what it is. But we've been rapidly pulling out plants because they're much easier to pull when they're not frozen into the ground. So that's what we've been working on this week. I'm just clearing out the garden. It's looking pretty well. Or looking pretty good so far. We also need to be collecting the leaves. It's one thing we like to do. We have a bunch of trees, and those leaves are very good for composting. They're great for bedding. If you can get them when they're dry and you can bag them up, we save them. And then over the winter, we'll put them down as bedding in pens. We can't do it in the goat pen because they will eat the leaves. They love the leaves. We don't want to encourage them eating things off of the ground where there's, manure and not other fun things. So we'll only use it in the chickens. They may eat it, but chickens can eat everything and not die. It's pretty wild. But yeah, that's where we are with the homestead. Everything's plugging along. We do have a new cat, which is kind of funny. Given the loss of Emma a few weeks ago, we now have a little kitten named Socks. He's adorable. If you're part of my email list, I sent a picture of him last week. But we call him Socks because he's all black with white feet. So it looks like he's wearing socks, and he's the fluffiest thing I've ever seen. But hoping he turns into a great hunter. His mother is a great hunter. So we're hoping he learns that as well, because there's just lots of mice here. They need to get eaten. So that is the problem of living on a homestead with fields all around you. But in terms of author news, everything is plugging along really well. I'm diving into Demon Blooded. I'm about 28,000 words now on that manuscript. I write about 2,000 words in a session. It's not every day. I try to write every day, but it doesn't always happen. weekends are ironically trickier because of the homestead work. I can usually squeeze it in the mornings or night during weekdays when I'm working. I can get it in there or after I'm done working. But that's going really well. Really enjoying the story. The Kids of Cyber City is the sci-fi trilogy that L. Blaze Hughes and I co-authored. Those are all completed. I've talked about them before. We now have a publish date. Those are ready to be published on November 27th. So that is coming right up. It is just a little over a month away. Thrilled to get these books out. If you would like to be an ARC reader for them, or you have kids or teenagers that would be like to be advanced readers for these, definitely let me know, or Lblaze Hughes know at stagbeetlebooks.com, or of course you can email me at authordkenner@gmail.com. But these are middle grade books, so they are written more for younger audience, ages 7, 8 to 12, but a lot of people can enjoy them. I've had a couple of friends and family read them and they thought they were really exciting and fun. So trilogy will be out all at once, which is pretty awesome and super rapid release, but you don't have to wait for any of the books, which is awesome. I figured it would be fun to read the blurb just for dramatic notes, see if you're interested in it, and maybe you'd like to art create it, or maybe you think, oh, my son or daughter, or my cousin, niece, nephew, they would really enjoy that. So let's get this open so we can read that. But let's see. So the blurb for the first book, which is called The Search for Silence, is: silence is prohibited. Sound and stimulation are the only truth for the citizens of Cyber City. For most, this truth is the basis for how they run their life. For some, this truth is the most annoying thing in the entire world. Sadie, your atypical fourth grader, wants nothing more than to deconstruct the sensory overload auditory processing systems forced onto every citizen's ears. Silence is a thing of fantasy, a reality that exists only in dreams, and it's a dream she shares with no one, until she bumps into Jason. Reality bends and shifts as two kids delve into a dangerous path toward silence, but are they prepared for what they'll find? So that is the blurb of the first book. We have the blurbs for the second and third. I won't read those because they're not really spoilery, but you need to read the books. So yeah, those are relatively shorter middle grade books. You want to pick those up on November 27th. We're pretty excited about that. But other than that, this month has also been me updating manuscripts. So as many of you know, I publish wide with my books. It's just I prefer to publish wide. I like the idea of Kindle Unlimited. I don't like the idea of exclusivity with my ebooks or anybody's ebooks. Really don't like that. Rubs me the wrong way. So I'm wide with my books. That being said, because I publish on Ingram Spark, which actually isn't related necessarily to the ebooks, I have neglected to update the manuscripts. There have been some outdated things. I changed some names. I changed some things in the books, not necessarily the plot line, but I've added some back and front matter. And I added a bunch of things to it that I hadn't been able to update. Well, this month, Ingram Spark has a promo code where you can upload replacements, or you can replace the files for free until the end of October. So I jumped on that because, expensive as publishing is, it became one of those things where a lot of it was kind of nice to have the back matter that I was updating. And I figured, at Ingram Spark, it just won't have that stuff. But if you're going to make it free, I'm going to take advantage of that. So I updated all of my manuscripts. They have QR codes to links. I've updated my website to have better pages for sales. So you can choose where to buy my books wherever you'd like. So I did a lot of that. And a lot of that was actually as a result of this conversation with Zach, ZS Diamanti, that you'll hear today. So it's kind of ironic that I've been working on this week, got them all updated, and it's based on this conversation with Zach. So I think you'll really enjoy that. But I don't believe there's any other updates. Oh, the last thing I will say is if you are one of these authors and you want to take advantage of this promo code in Ingram Spark and your books have already been there, you don't want to pay to upload the manuscripts, the code is FORYOU, all capital, no spaces, so FORYOU. Take advantage of that until the end of October 2023. If you're hearing this after that, then sorry, you missed it. But if you're hearing it now, then take advantage of that code. It's excellent. You can save a lot of money with it. So I believe that's all I have for updates. We can go ahead and shift over to the interview portion of the podcast with Zach. Hey, Zach, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing awesome, man. How you doing?
Doing so great. I am so grateful and happy that you're able to join me today. Before we get started on the topic, can you let us know how long have you been writing and publishing?
Yeah, so I've been writing and publishing for, I think we're going on about 5 or 6 years at this point. Mostly short fiction, mostly, short stories, horror, in the horror genre, in some sci-fi genre. I've gotten to write a whole bunch of literary nonfiction pieces as well, a bunch of articles. And actually, I sold a poem at one point, which is pretty awesome, a couple of years back. So I get to officially say I am a poet as well. So over the last few years, it's been really fun. But over the last, I'd say, over the last year and change, it's been all about books. So
That's the right way to move. No, I'm just kidding. There's all sorts
yeah,
of great,
right.
there's all sorts of great writing. I'm always impressed with people who write so many different things. And, I've known you for a little while now and hearing you've written
Yeah.
some of the, horror. I just can't imagine it for some reason. Clearly you're capable of it because you've done it, but it's just funny seeing people. I hear oftentimes that horror authors, their personalities are so different from what they write, and it's
Yeah.
hilarious. But
I've heard that before as well. I've had numerous people go, "Oh, you wrote that?" Like
like, yes,
I can't
yes, I
believe
did.
that came from you. That came from inside you somewhere. Yeah, yeah, it did.
Although I'm pretty sure if all of us unlocked that piece of our brain, people would be pretty shocked with what types of dark things they were able to write. Not that it's a problem. I think people just
Sure.
unconsciously have all this stuff in there. So,
It was things that would surprise people, right?
mhm. And I'm impressed that you sold a poem. I'm only going to say this because I find it hilarious. I actually do have a poetry blog, I believe that's still up, that I
No
wrote in high
way.
school. Nobody knows how to find it. My name is not attached to it. I believe I like did this fancy poetic thing and just called myself the author. Anyway, even my wife is like, I want to read it. I'm like, I will read it to you, but I don't want to tell you where the site is because it's
So we'll have to
embarrassing.
sooth.
So
Somebody will
embarrassing.
have to be a super sleuth and go and find it for us
If
and let
you
us
can
know.
find it, I will, whoever's listening, if you can find that blog, I will gift you all of my books wherever you are in the world because
Oh
there's
man, that's a
nothing
prize.
attached to me.
That
So
is
I
a
will be so
prize.
impressed. In any case, that's not what we're here to talk about, right? There's so many things
Love it.
that I've learned from you over the months and years that we've known each other, but I want to pick your brain a little bit about something that you're passionate about, something that I feel like you're doing very, very well, and that is building the foundation for an author business /
Yeah.
career. So let's dive into that.
Yeah, it's such a vital piece, right? Of doing, if you want to have an author career, a career is more than just like one book, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is this is something you want to do with some longevity, right? This is something you want to do for a lifetime. Or I had two careers prior to this. I was in the military and I was in ministry for 10 years, and I was in the military for 6, right? And so I really did live in two different careers prior to this. And what I learned through that process is everything has a foundation, right? Everything has a starting block. You have to have stuff set up in order for you to launch off of it into something greater, right? And it is a painful process.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a process and a test of patience and willpower that I mean will test you to the brink. And but it's required if you want it to be more than just a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough, man. It's tough. For example, this book right here, Stone and Sky here. This book, Stone and
I'm
Sky,
gonna say
right?
show it. There you go.
I got one right here. Big screen. There you go. This book right here, Stone and Sky, right? Just came out August 29th. And it has been out for a month now, a month and a couple days, and it has gone wonderfully. I mean, just wonderfully. I have been so thrilled with how the launch has gone, and the things that have come out of the process of the launch. But that book was almost published ready, only needing its final edits back in like December
Mm,
of 2022. Okay, so we're talking, I mean, from December all the way to almost September, this book was not out. even though it was pretty much ready. We had one more edit to go through, which we did a few months after December, because I realized that, okay, no, we have to wait. We got to do this right. Let's make sure that we build the foundation, build the starting block, so that we can launch off of this. Because I didn't want to be, you hear the people say, I don't want to be like, I published my book and I sold 3 copies, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's rough. Like,
Yes.
yeah, that's terrible. And you think to yourself, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy that goes and does all this work to write a wonderful book that I love, and I publish it, and I have 3 sales in the first, 6 months. And you're just like, I put so much heart and soul into this book and nobody bought it. Oh, my grandma bought it. My mom didn't even buy it. Like you live,
Hmm.
the people who bought it, and there's only 3 of them, and one of them isn't even your mom. Right. And you go, I don't want that. I don't want to be that. I don't want to end up there. So you got to build a foundation.
So, what gave you the timeline? Just so I understand your decision making process about why you decided to hold off, but how did you gain the confidence to know that? Because in August is when you launched it, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, in that many months, how did you know? How are you so confident that you would be able to get enough of a foundation by that date?
100% honesty, I wasn't confident.
Oh, okay,
Um,
fair enough.
I was like, whoo, okay. By giving myself a timeline, I did have a goal in
Yeah.
mind. So it was like, okay, I have a goal line that I have to get to, right? Okay, so I can aim for that. But that means that, okay, if I go from December and I'll tell you, like, when it really everything started ticking up was February, when I really started pushing everything and saying,
Hmm.
okay, we're pushing towards this goal of August 29th. It was a pretty arbitrary date, I'll be honest with you. I wanted to have at least a summer's worth, because I'm learning a bunch of this stuff, right? This was the first like full-length novel that I was publishing, right? So I was like, I really want to have the summer, just so I know I have all that extra space and time for me to really nail down anything funky that I got to work out, or things that I didn't see coming, right? And
Hmm.
give me all that extra space. So I said, okay, let's do it after the summer. Kids go back to school in August, and they'll be back at school for a couple of weeks before launch day. So I have those couple of weeks where I also have nobody at the house as well. And that gives me all my last second time to make sure I've got everything right. So it was arbitrary, but it was also like, okay, let's push it to there so that I make sure I have enough time. And then in February, so from December to February, I spent all that time building things, right? Building a website, building an author
Hmm.
website, building a readers list, which, is what everybody tells you you got to do. And now I'm with them. You got to do it. It's totally worth it.
Hmm.
Um, and putting those things together. And I wasn't even building the list yet, right? So, I mean, by February, I had 49 people on my list. And that was begging friends and family,
Hmm.
begging people to just get on the list, right? So that I could run tests. I set up automations for, I gave away. So for people who join my mailing list, they get 7 free stories, 7 free fantasy stories about characters that show up in Stone and Sky, right? And it's fantasy fun. You get to know characters that are going to show up, and people are like, oh, that sounds fun. Yeah, I'll go check that out. And it's for free, right? And you're going to get 7 of them, which is wonderful. But I had to build a whole automated system that would send out, email one. Here's the first free story. So excited that you could get it. And then I can't wait to hear what you think of it. And then they get the next one a few days later that says, hey, here's story number 2. What did you think about number 1? Story number 1 about American Rora, the falconer and his falcon, right? And then building a whole system that actually made sense, and it gives them some information about me and who I am, and they get to know who I am as a person and as an author. Then they get to know, oh, this is where you can connect with me outside of our readers list, right? And I had to build this whole thing, right? So basically, from December until February, I was building that.
Mm-hmm.
I took a couple of months to build all of those things, and then building a website store where I could sell some of my short stories, and making sure that the website worked, making sure that all the buttons worked properly, getting starting to figure out, copyright, and figuring out all these other things that you got to know, that you just don't know until you know, right? And so I spent all that time doing that, building the foundation. And then February, I was like, okay, I think, I think we're ready to actually start making this foundation even bigger. Let's actually start reaching out to people. So we're talking months. I spent months building all that stuff before I even started reaching out to people and trying to find new people and find new readers. And I went, okay, February, here we go. It's time to get on TikTok. It's time to get on Book Talk, because everybody tells you you got to be on Book Talk in order
Mm-hmm.
to, be an indie author and find an audience, right? All right, fine, fine. So I joined Book Talk in February, and I was on there for a couple of weeks where I didn't post anything. I was just like, okay, let me teach the algorithm what my account's all about. My
Mm-hmm.
account is all about fantasy, fantasy books, fantasy bookish things, fantasy maps, and fantasy this, and books, and all bookish fantasy things, right? And I'm following people like you and EA Winters and Brady Hunsaker and all these people that we now I'm connected with all of you guys. It's wonderful to be a part of it. But at that point, I had zero followers, right? I had nothing, but I was training the algorithm to know what my account was about, by following all you guys and interacting with you guys. And then when it was finally came time, it was like, okay, been doing this for a few weeks. I've been training the algorithm. We're like 2.5 weeks in, and I go, I think it's finally time to start posting. I posted my first post, and it was like, I think it was overnight. I was at 1,000 people, and I could add a link into my thing, and I was like, "Holy cow, this worked!" I trained the algorithm to know what my account was about, made my first post, and all of a sudden, bam, it was just like that. We were at 1,000. And then, of course, making posts after that, of course, being very specific to niche my account, to
Mm-hmm.
be about fantasy, be about book talk, be about books. And it just snowballed from there, right? And that, using book talk and using TikTok to build the readers list was the main goal, right? So having a strategy going into Book Talk, not just to gain followers, because Book Talk is very good about reaching out to new people for you,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not very good at telling all of your followers what you've done
Mm-hmm.
or what you just did recently. Because so right now, I'm at 30 something thousand followers. You know the drill. You're at 40 something, right? And when you post, you don't get 40,000 views, right? On
Mm-hmm.
every post. Boy, if it sent it to every one of your followers first, man, we'd be killing it, right? But we probably wouldn't have grown up to that at the same time, right? So that's not what TikTok is very good at. So what you do is you have to get people from TikTok to join your readers list so that you have actual interaction with them through email. And that is so vitally important in while building your foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
You just hit on so many important things right there. We don't have time to dive into each thing and jump into everything, but I think one thing that you highlighted there is taking the time to plan and carefully consider your goals and how what you
Yeah.
that foundation you're building will support that is very important. Historically, there's a lot of authors like myself who I don't have a marketing mindset. I don't like social media. There's a lot of things that I just wasn't thinking about when I wrote my first book and had it ready to publish. And I remember thinking, oh, I have this book ready to publish, but I don't know what to do with it, right? So I didn't have an Instagram at the time. I didn't have anything, and so
Right.
I tried to do the same thing. Try to create a book talk. Wasn't as big back then when I published my
Sure.
first book. It was existing a little bit. It got pretty big about 6 months in, and that's when I jumped on. But I think that's the thing that a lot of authors forget is it's okay and good to socialize and market not only your book and what you're writing, but yourself as an author, as a person prior to
Totally.
having any works out. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people
Yes.
make, like myself. I didn't think about
Sure.
it. I hadn't thought about, there's no, I don't have any readers. I don't have that reader list that you're talking about. So that being said, I want to kind of see if we can, and this is, if you don't have this solidified in your mind, not a problem, but I would
Sure.
love to get your perspective on this author foundation. You've mentioned the reader list, but what are the other pillars that you would deem as this foundation that you've been
Yeah.
building of this
Yeah.
author career?
Yeah. So obviously your list is super important because you get to interact with people directly through their email, and
Mm-hmm.
people actually check their emails more than you think, right? Even most readers lists, if you're getting between 40 and 60% open rate, you're actually looking really good. Now think about that, because if you're talking about 40 to 60% of the people on your list are seeing it, imagine if you had, for example, your 30,000 followers on TikTok, right? Imagine if 40 to 60% of them actually saw every video that you posted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thus, the importance of a mailing list, right? So, this is a huge foundation. Now, one of the other things is that, so foundationally, you should have an author website. Why do you need an author website? Well, it's the place where everybody can gather, everybody can come together in the same place to find you and what you're doing, right? You and your books. You
Mm-hmm.
gotta have that, because and honestly, I get it. You sell your books on Amazon, and you sell your books on Barnes and Noble, and you sell ebooks on Google Play and Apple, and I get it. I got my books on all of those as well. But having one place that you can send people to is vitally important, because what it does is it gives you the opportunity to send anybody that you connect with, period, end of story, anybody you connect with, to one place where they can find all the things that they need to find. So, for example, my business cards have a QR code on them. What does that QR code go to? It goes to zsdiamanti.com/links. When people go to the link in my bio on TikTok, where does it go to? zsdiamanti.com/links. When people do the same thing in Instagram, zsdiamanti.com/links. They're all going to the same place, but it's got very specific buttons that I can change out when I need to, and it sends everybody to the same place. Another thing that you get when you have a website. So, for example, in my books at the beginning, I have this, and it says, here, you can get the free preludes at this link, and here's a QR code for you to go and find it. Guess what? I never have to change that QR code ever, because
Mm-hmm.
I will always have that link for me. And having that link means that I can put stuff in the book like this that will perpetually forever be evergreen, right? Another thing, so check this out. So I want people to find the new book, the upcoming book. I could put a QR code in there, and it takes them to the page that talks about Stone and Tide, and boom, they can find it wherever they want. I can I can say, hey, connect with me on social media. Put a QR code. It goes to zsdiamanti.com/links. Bam, they can go find all my links right there, right? This one is a great one as well. I created a page on my website that talks about how reviews are super important for indie authors. And so I have a page in the back of my book that talks about how important it is, but they can also follow this QR code, and it shows them here's some of the best places you can leave a review and how important it would be for you to do it here. And it's wonderful that you could do that. Having a website that you've built that has all the different pages and things that you need, and being able to use QR codes to get it to everyone. I've got QR codes on bookmarks. I've got QR codes on stickers, and they all send people back to the hub, right? And having that hub is necessary, because if you have the hub, it's always yours, and you don't print 7,000 business cards that you eventually have to change later. And you're like, man, I only gave away 200 of those business cards. Now I have to go buy 7,000 more business cards with this new link on it. No, man, build the foundation, have the place, the hub where everybody could go, and connect everything to that so that you don't have to do the work twice, right? Super important. You got your website, you've got your readers list. Those are the two biggies, right? And then you've got to find the way to collect your readers, to gather your readers. So you got the place where they're all going to meet. You got the place where you're going to be able to connect with them personally. And now you've got to find the way that you're going to gather them. All right. This is where it gets a little tricky, and this is where it kind of varies for most authors, I think.
This is where it gets tricky. I feel like it's been tricky up to this point.
Well,
You're downplaying your skills, Zach, and what you've done.
Well, okay, but think about it. So everything I just talked about, all those stuff, all those things, you can build by yourself.
True.
Like
That's
you
fair.
could just build that stuff, and it can just be built, and you can do it, right? But getting other people to be a part of it, that's where it gets really tricky.
That's
because
fair.
all that stuff you built, it's done. You built this foundation in this hub, in this wonderful place for them to gather. But the third pillar is you got to actually get people there, right? You got to gather people. And so this is where it varies for authors like crazy, right? Because some authors do crazy good on Instagram because they make these really pretty pictures with all the fall things and all the things, like all the pretty trinkets and stuff around the books, right? And they do crazy good on Instagram. Some authors do crazy good on YouTube, and they go make videos about this, and here let me teach you about this, or they go and teach people about stuff to gather people in. Some people do great on TikTok, which is where I found my success, like most of my success early on so far. But even I'm starting to shift and look at things differently as well as I progress and as I learn what kind of time I have, because that's a huge factor. You and I were talking a little bit about this before, how you got to do what actually works for you, right? If you're going to spend all your time, for example, I actually really like Instagram. Like, I like it. It's one of those weird things where I really don't use social media in general personally, but if there was one that I would actually scroll a little bit and look at and like see what was going on, it would be Instagram. It's a visual picture thing for me. And so I can't do Instagram very well. Like, I have to avoid Instagram I have to be very specific at how I tackle things on Instagram. I am starting to grow it now, but it's after having grown a TikTok and learning how to process and go through the strategy side of things for TikTok before going, okay, now I can go back to Instagram without falling down the rabbit hole and getting sucked up by all the craziness that you can get sucked up by, right?
The whirlwind of content. I fell into that trap of TikTok. We were talking about this beforehand. And yeah, I understand that's kind of the floundering because there's so much to consume and so much to do. They just kind of get lost in all of it. But yeah, I've seen your approaches. Because like you were on YouTube and at TikTok kind of at the same time. And based on what I've seen, you've kind of leaned into TikTok a little bit more. And which is great. You've leveraged that to gather readers, find more audience, build a community.
Right.
And now that you've kind of gotten to a certain point, it's like, all right, reevaluate, let's take a look at everything. But I mean, the fact of the matter is nobody can have time for all the things.
Right.
If you're an author, it makes sense to look at your strategy and say, this social media platform, whichever it is, some people love Twitter, some people love Instagram,
Totally.
TikTok, whatever
Right.
it is,
Right.
and lean more heavily into that. And that you kind of have to leave the other ones by the wayside until you
Right.
can ground yourself in that and whatever your
Yeah.
strategy is. And then that's when you can look at potentially opening it back up a little bit. And times change. TikTok could die at some point, but right now
Totally.
it's not.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Right. Yeah. Right now it's alive and thriving. Right. Recently they just opened up the TikTok shop, right? For the US, and it is a pretty awesome thing, right? It's and that's another thing, right? As you're going, so while you're building the foundation, it's like really important for you to test things and see what you like and see what works for you. Because so again, think about this. I started in February. My book didn't even come out until August. I only really started telling people that I had a book coming like a couple of months in, right? So most of my posts were just about fantasy books and reading fantasy books and bookish things, right? For the most part. And even now I try to live by the rule of 2 to 1. So posting two things that are like bookish or fantasy book like or whatever, and then one about my book, right? So to continue engagement, right? Because if you just keep posting the same thing over and over, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, guess what? Nobody's going to buy your book. um and your
true.
account is never going to grow because they're like, I see that, that's all you do. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's all you post, so why am I going to bother following you, right? You got to give people something else for them to follow you. But that is a part of testing and finding out what works for you. After that, then other things start to show up, like a TikTok shop. And you go, okay, I'm doing pretty well on TikTok. Or, yeah, I know Instagram has shop features.
Mm-hmm.
There are, YouTube has shop features that you can set up eventually as well. Um, and all of them have different benchmarks for you to, be able to use those things. However, once you start actually garnering some, okay, I'm figuring this out, I'm getting pretty good at this, that's when you go, okay, let's see what other features are here and
Mm-hmm.
what can I take advantage of? What can I utilize to bolster this even more, or even reach more people, or even how can I use this to make this a better experience for everybody who's a part of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Set up a TikTok shop recently, and I mean, and I set up a map, a pin map that we
Mm-hmm.
use, where people can order autographed copies of my books, both of them. They can order Stone and Sky, and they can order the Stone and Sky Preludes collection, signed copies from my TikTok shop now directly, and I can attach that to videos. And when I attach it to videos, people can buy it directly from that video, which is
Mm-hmm.
an insane feature. So cool. But also, we set up a thing that we thought would be really fun. I got the idea from Marshall J. Moore, who's great, by the way. He did it on a little bit of a smaller scale. I kind of went crazy with it. I took the idea and I was like, oh, I like that. But we could also do this, and I went crazy. And so we have this map that we put pins on for everywhere that we end up sending autographed copies for. And so every time I update that map on that video, I add, Stone and Sky, signed Stone and Sky copy and signed Stone and Sky Preludes collection to that. And people can go, oh, they see that their state isn't there, or
Mm-hmm.
they're like, I want to see myself on the map, and they go and buy it directly from the TikTok from that video. It's so cool, some of the things that you can do, but you don't go in with the mindset of, okay, that's what I'm going to start with that, because
Mm-hmm.
you can't start by trying to sell people things. You have to start with people coming to know you first and know what you're about and know what you have to offer them before you start selling them anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree that's where that foundation comes in, right? Because, I think a lot of authors tend to get really excited about their books, as they should, because they
For
wrote the
sure.
stories and they want
Yeah.
people to read them. They want everybody to enjoy the story. but you can't reach those people if they don't have that specific place. The other thing that I want to point out, and I've
Yeah.
heard this from a lot of really successful independent authors,
Yeah.
that they I'm going to say this, take this with a grain of salt, because I know everybody's story is different. Everybody's platforms are quite different, and that's okay. There's lots of different ways that you can do things. But most of the indie authors that I have listened to or spoken with that are very successful say you can't and should not rely on platforms that you don't own. And this is what you talked to a little bit about before with having your website,
Totally.
having your email list, social media platforms, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all these websites,
Yep.
you can't always rely on them. It's great to use them. There's no issue with using
Totally.
them. But at the end of the day, it's that hub. It's owning as much of that relationship, owning as much of that community as you can without outsourcing, because at any time any of these platforms could tank.
Correct.
Amazon could just decide to shut down your account, and that's why I bring it up, because
Yep.
some of these successful authors have said, I was in Kindle Unlimited, I was only on Amazon. They saw something that was not even real and they shut down my account. I didn't have a say in it, and as much as I
Right.
tried to get it back, I couldn't. And they all said, I learned at that time that it's just unwise to put all of your eggs in one basket. And so
Correct.
that's why it's nice to have that foundation that's not
Totally.
dependent on anything. But like you said, what you built yourself, that time you
Correct.
took to build that yourself is instrumental for it becoming a career. Now, I want to
Right.
bring this up because now you might not have the best answer for this. I don't know that I have the best answer for this,
Yeah.
right? But you're doing this full time, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Many authors, if not
Mostly. Yeah.
most of the authors at the beginning, do not have that option, right? They're not full
Totally.
time. They don't have
Right.
the time to pour into this. So, hearing all the things you say, what would you say to someone who could maybe only spend 30 minutes to an hour a day
Yeah.
on what would you recommend they go about doing?
Yeah. Build your website first.
Okay.
Build the hub. Build the hub first. So when you build a foundation, you're building the thing that everything else has to be built on top of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So build the website first. Once you have the website, build the readers list. Figure out where you're going to use it, whether you use MailerLite or whether you use SendFox, or I mean, some people even like MailChimp, which I don't understand,
I
but
hate it. I
I
tried
don't
it.
understand.
It was
It's,
horrible.
but some people have used MailChimp for work or something, so they're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with it, right? So okay, great, good for you. It's not for me, not
Mm-hmm.
for Dan. For some of us, it's like, whoa, no, that's not gonna work. But whatever that is, right? Whatever it is, the place that you're going to collect your readers list together, the place you're going to use to send out your emails, that kind of stuff, build that. So build your website first, and it really doesn't have to be overcomplicated, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Building your website really can be very, very simple. In fact, most of the time, simple design for websites is best. That's the best way to go. So simple designs are classic. It's really good. Simplify everything. Write everything down. Make sure that you're organized. Keep yourself paying attention, and you don't have to build a gajillion web pages. You just don't. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to have 800 web pages. Oh, well, this one you click on here and it goes to here and then it goes over to here. You don't have to have this crazy key that you can't even keep track of. Use something easy like Zyro. Zyro is a place where you can drag and drop your website builder, and it's super cheap right now because they're relatively new in the last several years. But I mean, you can get a few years worth out of Zyro for less than what you pay for a year's worth anywhere else, right? So go to Zyro, go get that. But drag and drop and build something, put something together as the foundation. You need to add more pages later. Okay, you've already built the foundation. You built the hub, add a
Mm-hmm.
page to it. Boom, easy. Now, once you've built these things, now it's just adding and maintaining. That's it. And for your sake, do your very best to make every page as generic for yourself, as generic for you as possible, so you never have to go and change that page. All right. The only thing you should ever have to change on that page is adding a button if it becomes available on a different marketplace or whatever. I
Hmm.
mean, make it as simple on yourself as possible. I have pages on my website that I literally do not have to look at anymore because I know that when I built it, I made it so that I wouldn't have to change it later.
Hmm.
Do that. When you're building the foundation, you're making your life easy for later. Then while you're in your setting up your email list thing, go through and set up automations. It's super important that you set up automations so that when people join your mailing list, they automatically get the email with your reader magnet. They automatically get the follow-up email that comes like 5 days after the reader magnet, and then the one that comes after that for 5 days after that. Because frankly, if you can give them enough information in your automation that you don't have to add that stuff to your email every time you email everybody, it saves you time in the long run. Build the foundation. So, website first, build the hub. Okay, you can add pages after, and most of the time, like Zyro or most other places, you can duplicate a page. So, like,
Hmm. Yep,
build
that's what I
a
do all the time.
page for your book. Yeah, build a page for your book with all the buttons and everything else, and then duplicate it for the next book, and then just change the links on the
Hmm.
buttons. Boom, done. You're done. I mean, make your life easier for yourself. Make everything as automatic as possible for yourself because you're going to be busy with all the other things. You're going to be busy with the gathering of people. You're gonna, because that's where the time real, like the time and effort really comes in, because you actually have to engage people to get them to come and actually join your readers list, right? You have to do that. And again, you're doing that not so that they'll stay on some platform that will eventually burn and die, right? You're doing it so that they will come and be a part of what you have built. So build the website, build the readers list, then move on to everything else. That's that's if you only have a certain amount of time, do that first.
Just minor little things, but no, in all reality it's totally possible. It may take some time, right? So full disclosure, and if
Yeah.
you're listening, if you look at my sites, it's very clearly a copycat of ZS Diamanti. Not even gonna lie, because I went and looked and I was like, this is slick. Like I was using Wix prior to Zyro, and it was just atrocious. And I'm colorblind, first off, so I'm gonna throw that out there
Right.
because my design prowess is none. It's absolutely nil. Don't have an eye for colors. I don't have an eye for anything looking good because I don't really notice things looking good. I just don't notice colors. I don't notice design things. So Wix did not support me very well in that. Zyro has a lot of amazing templates that
Yeah,
just make it
totally.
look clean without doing too much work. Even my wife was
Right.
like, wow, this website looks so much better. And the effort was less. It was a lot less effort
Yeah.
in Zyro. So I recommend that
And
as
it's
well.
minimal because you can use templates, right? And
Hmm.
that's the thing. It might seem daunting. I know it sounds like a lot and it seems daunting, but really you can just start building
Hmm.
it. That's it. I mean,
Well,
just piece by piece.
but then keep going, right? That's the piece by piece, because I think a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
feel overwhelmed by the whole of it. Is I have to
Yeah.
build this fancy website. Mine is still nowhere as beautiful and slick as yours. However, I do try to chip away at it every little bit, once a month or once every
That's
week. It's just
right.
like I need to dive in. There's a couple things I realize were a little bit weird, add this little element. It doesn't have to be immediately when you
Correct.
don't have a lot of time. You prioritize the things. You're like, well, at least I have a website. That's perfect. What's
Right.
the next
Right.
need? Right? Where do people go? What is their inclination to build this list? And then you just do this one thing at a time. And if
Correct.
that's once per week,
Right.
awesome, right? You're building that foundation a little bit slower
Right.
than a full-time person, but you're still building it.
Yeah. And if it makes you guys feel better, I was actually in the middle of a comic book coloring contract. So I was still coloring comic book pages uh a majority of my time while I was building that stuff. So I mean, guys, you could do it too. It's
Yep, you were busy.
that right. It's definitely it's not like it was 100% my full-time job for sure. Uh you guys can do it as well. Seriously.
So
It's
keep
very
that in
attainable.
mind. Well, I definitely would love to keep going. There's so many things we could dive into, but we are running short on time. So
Man, it
before
goes so
we,
fast, right?
it goes really fast. Seriously, I feel like we could talk for hours and it wouldn't feel like hours. My listeners might disagree,
Yeah.
but I feel like it goes
They'd be
quick.
falling
Uh,
asleep to us because we've been
like, what
on
the
so
heck are
long.
they still talking? But where can people find more information about you and your books?
Yeah. If you guys would like to, if you would like to get the 7 free fantasy prelude stories that I give out to everybody who joins my mailing list, you can find that at freefantasyfiction.com. That's freefantasyfiction.com. Yes, it was available. The URL, the domain was
Legit.
available. Now it's not, because I was like, yes, that's mine. But what you'll notice, here's another trick actually in this closing. And what you'll notice is it actually takes you, freefantasyfiction.com takes you directly to a page on my website that's all about free fantasy fiction. That directly to here's what you get when you join my readers list: 7 free prelude stories. It's got a video on it. It's, guys, it's still the hub. It's sending you back to the hub. So freefantasyfiction.com if you would like to get 7 free prelude stories about the characters that you find and meet in Stone and Sky, which is an epic fantasy adventure story that I hope you guys will love. And while you're there, you'll be able to click all over my website. Go explore it. Pull it apart, go and dissect it and learn from it what you can, glean from it what you can. I do the same thing when I visit other authors' websites. I go, oh, that's a cool idea. I should totally add that, or whatever. Glean what you can, take from it any golden nugget that you find.
I definitely have already done that, and I'll do it more. I didn't even mention I'm like this far from finishing your book. So
Oh
I
yeah,
have like
yeah.
60 pages left or something.
Oh, that's
I actually
awesome.
did what's recommended in your books and waited until the chapter before to read the prelude
Oh,
story,
that's
which
so fun.
it was a really fun experience. I recommend that.
Oh, that's
But
curious. I've been curious about hearing how people have been reading
no, I wanted to do it that way
preludes
because I thought it was
collection
so
and
cool. He said read before X chapter. It's like
yeah,
I can do that. So I just carried them together. I've obviously finished the last one because I passed that chapter, but so now I don't carry the
yeah,
short stories anymore.
sure.
But yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. I'm hoping I love to see more of the perspectives because there's so many different POVs,
Yes,
which I just
yes,
love the multifaceted story. So I don't know how
yeah,
it ends yet, but it's getting pretty
yeah.
intense.
I just
It's
turned book
wild.
two in. I just
Oh,
turned book two
nice.
in for second round of edits, actually. So
Legit.
that one's going along. And actually, I spent all day today before I got on with you prepping book three. So
Love it.
here we go.
That's exciting. Well, thanks again for joining. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me. That's so much fun.
I hope you found that as encouraging and exciting as I did. So, talking to Zach, he has this infectious, charismatic spirit about him. He's a really great guy. I really liked working with him. Been friends with him for a while now, and he's doing amazing things with his books. Now, if you are an author like me, you don't have tons of time to do things. He does say, and it's very true, that setting up your hub, doing some of these things is one, worth taking the time to do, and two, it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. While he invests a lot of time in things, if you're like me, you don't have a lot of time, you just do the minimum. What can I do, what's within my power and budget to put together so that I do have this hub just in case it does become an author career at some point. You want to set yourself up for success. If that could be your plan, maybe if you're just a hobby author, you never plan on going anywhere with it, then maybe it's not worth the time. But if you ever think maybe I'd like to have these things set up just in case, definitely worth the time, because it's just going to make it easier for people to find you. Your SEO, your search engine optimization, and Google is going to be so much better if you have these websites, this kind of hub for yourself, as well as these other, you're getting your presence in a more permanent way on websites online. So definitely worth it. But next week, we will be talking to Neil Romrell about how Dungeons and Dragons bolsters his creativity in writing and crafting fantasy stories. So it's a really fun conversation with him. We talk about cryptids. If you don't know what a cryptid is, then you're going to want to join the episode to learn more about it, or you can Google it like I did. Now, I had heard the term before, but we go in depth about what those are, why he's fascinated in them. And we just talk about how he's been playing Dungeons and Dragons for somewhere around 30, 35 years. and how that has helped him and has bolstered his creativity. So it's a really fun conversation. If you're into D&D, you'll want to take advantage of this conversation. If you're not, definitely learn from it. It's really fun conversation with Neil. As usual, if you'd like to join me on my podcast, head to thecasualauthor.com. THECASUAL author.com, just like it sounds. And you can fill out the pitch form there, say, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, these are the books that I write. Love to have you on the podcast. That would be great. We are rapidly approaching episode 100. I have a really special conversation prepared for that one. So hopefully you're looking forward to that. But thanks again for joining me today. Once again, share with your friends and family or other authors who might be interested in the podcast. I look forward to talking to you next week.